Hello everyone and welcome back to Farmer Joe Homesteading. By popular demand, we are going to be doing a winter series on winter care for our birds. So we are going to be going through each one of the different species we have here on the farm and covering the topic of winter care with each of our species. Today we are going to be covering chickens. Okay, so there's not a whole lot of light in here. It's pretty dark because we have plastic up on all the windows. I have had a lot of people ask how you keep your coops draft free, and our simple solution is plastic. So this window is completely covered in plastic. It is stapled all the way around. It is 2 layers thick. When it gets really windy, I'll come in here and feel with my hand around it and make sure that there is no air coming through. It definitely is colder here. You can feel it is cold, but there's not a significant amount coming through. I have decided to leave this window like that for now until the temperatures really drop. We are staying at like the -10 range, sometimes dropping into the -20s at night, but for now this has been working pretty well. We still have a lot of birds that sleep on this corner roost here, and they cozy together, and it's been fine as long as there's no wind blowing through this space. Now this window was a different story. There was the plastic, we have a layer of plastic on the outside of the window, but it had ripped open in the wind, so it wasn't sealing very good. So we put feed bags overlapped all across this whole space. I've had a lot of people ask how you do ventilation while also keeping drafts out. This is one of the things that works really, really well for that. This with the feed bags layered like that, if any wind or draft comes through, it would be very, very minimal, and it would head down to the floor. So it will be coming down instead of straight across, because this is straight across from my roost bars where my birds sleep at night. So with this one, if it gets really, really windy from the west, it would come straight down onto the floor. And because we have all of the sheets and stuff, that wind isn't going to blow all the way up and onto my birds. So it's okay to have that wind, a little bit of breeze coming through that way. It will help keep the air fresh in here. We have 54 birds in this space. It is a pretty good sized space, and there's still a lot of room on the roost bars. So having 54 birds in here, though, is a lot of condensation from their breathing in and out all night, plus all of the poop. This is only a couple days worth because I just cleaned this. So they make a lot of poop, which makes a lot of ammonia, it just smells in here if you don't have good ventilation, and it's not good for the respiratory. So that's why we do that instead of doing just another full sheet of plastic that would hold everything out. So there is some airflow in here. Now, that being said, it's not that when it's really windy, the wind just blows through. The way that those bags are layered, and because there is still plastic on the other side, plus the bunny hutch is right there, there's not a significant amount. So the birds are not going to be feeling all that draftiness from that area. The other thing we do for ventilation in here is the door that we installed has 2 holes here for putting a doorknob or a lock on it. Now, obviously, we don't need a doorknob or a lock. It's a chicken coop. So those holes are also ventilation, and they're small enough that it's not going to produce a significant amount of draft or wind, and so they still have airflow there. So if you have, there is good on your, but even better would be on the top of that door. The only problem is that this door has a window, so it's kind of difficult to be able to get, to be able to drill the holes up in the top there. And so that is a normal thing too. People will just drill those holes. They don't have to be very big, just along the top of your door, as long as it's not equal to your roost. So that's the biggest thing, is if your door is right by where the roost is. You want to be able to avoid that. You also want to avoid drafts coming in around your door. So if you have a door, you want it to be sealed off nicely so that you don't have drafts blowing back and forth. Your door is not sealed off nicely, then bags work for that too, which is why I have bags on a lot of my doors. Many of you have noticed that, but on almost all of my chicken coops, there are bags somewhere. And that is to help slow down drafts, prevent drafts, and hold heat in. So this is the door to the chick side of this coop. And because I've got all those heat lamps running, I want to hold that heat into that space for our chicks. So we have a row of bags on the back there where the frame, where the hinges are, and then also bags along here all the way down to keep the wind out, because I leave this door cracked a little bit during the day, and so that will help with the little chickies on that side. Because I am in here, the door is open this far, but I actually usually only leave it open far enough just for the chickens to come back and forth. Today is actually not too bad. It's -10. On the really, really cold days, I keep the door pretty closed, so they can't, it's just enough for the chickens to go back and forth if they wanted to get their water. Speaking of water, I'll show you what we do for the water in the winter. Get into everything. I threw this out forever ago. You guys just get into everything, huh? They're starting to shred my string bag. Yeah, you're rotten. You're all rotten. So, water for chickens in the winter. We do water tubs. So this is just a rubber tub so that they can get their water from it. It's just big enough that it doesn't freeze right away, and I can dump it and kick it out really easily. So I like having this. And the geese keep bathing in it. Yes, you do. And so that's always a problem. They have their own water, but they froze it. Keeping your water outside is very, very important. If your water is inside the coop, it's going to produce moisture. Moisture is what causes frostbite. If you have high humidity, it's that will cause that frostbite on their skin. So we try to keep the water outside so that we avoid all of that altogether, so that they can come outside and get a drink. When it gets down into the -30, -40 range, I will bring the water inside, because at that point they're gonna need the water, and I just watch and they can have water, and I'll remove the tub again, because I don't want them getting bad frostbite. Now, we just went through a pretty nasty cold snap in November, which we were not anticipating whatsoever. We had super high winds. It was like -30 wind chills. So even though it was only like -20, -25, the wind was nasty. So with that nasty wind, for some reason, we also had very high humidity just in the air, which I could not control. It was like 60 to 80% just outside. It was like this hazy, thick fog, and we lost a lot of combs. I've heard a lot of people say just put Vaseline on it. I've seen a lot of people arguing about that online. The problem with Vaseline is Vaseline does have a freezing point. And up here, it gets so bitter cold that Vaseline will actually freeze onto the comb, and it can actually make the frostbite worse or prolong the frostbite process. With frostbite, it kills the tissue rots off, falls off, and it's done. And so you can put honey on it too to help soothe it. Honey is like raw, natural honey is really good for it. But again, honey has a freezing point. And so if I put honey on their combs, it will just do the same thing as the Vaseline. So it can be really awful. We lose combs every winter no matter what I try to do. My coops, like this coop, isn't necessarily insulated. It has shavings in the wall, which was considered insulation when this house was built. And so they do have shavings all in the walls. And I've done all the plasticking around the windows to keep it nice and warm in here. I put plastic on the ceiling in there to try and hold the heat down. There is body heat in there. When all the birds are in there at night, it is warmer than outside. So there is really nothing else I could do other than add heat. So heating coops is the next topic I want to talk about. Heating coops is extremely popular. The reason we do not heat our coops is because we live in such a cold climate. It's cold for months, which means I would need to have all these heat lamps plugged in for months. The biggest issue with that is that they're not going to be acclimatized to the weather outside, which means they're only going to be acclimatized to the warm, cozy coop inside and not to the outside. Chickens are fully feathered animals. They will produce lots of warmth on their bodies because of those feathers. A lot of times you'll see them fluffed out. I actually have one right here. They're sitting there fluffing. They're keeping their feathers nice and loose, which helps produce more body heat. They are birds, they are animals. They will keep themselves warm. So if I am heating my coop, they're not going to be doing that. It's the same theory of like having an inside dog. If you have an inside house dog, they're not going to produce that extra layer of winter hair to be able to stay outside, so they're going to have to stay inside. And so with these chickens, if I'm leaving them inside all the time on that heat lamp, it's not good for their respiratory system because they're going to be stuffy inside. It's like locking someone in their apartment all the time, not letting them have access to the fresh air. And I don't like doing that. They are animals. They need to be outside. So we do not heat our coops because I want them to be going outside. That being said, if it gets really, really cold, like during that cold snap, when it was like minus 25 and that nasty wind, I do have a coop of roosters right now, and I did turn on my heat lamp in there, and even with the heat lamp, I still lost all their combs. So sometimes it's just the way it is. It was just the moisture content. That doesn't usually happen this time of year. Usually that comes in the minus 30, minus 40 temperatures. So it is heartbreaking. I really, really don't like to have to deal with that. But it is what it is. And so we do our best. Our birds still are happy and healthy, and we do what we can to help them stay comfy and cozy during the winter time. Obviously, they are all still happy. They're outside. We've got girls foraging and picking, and we've got more over there. They still just do their normal chicken thing, and they are still nice and happy. Now, speaking of frostbite, so this is Goliath here. Goliath is our 1.5-year-old rooster, and he always likes to run away. But he lost his comb, you can see there, from frostbite last year. We have this opal that's losing just the tips and a little bit on his wattle that are starting to come off. So that is what frostbite did for him last year. And now this year, while all the roosters are losing their tips, he is all good and all fine and dandy because he has already been there, done that. Is it ideal? No. I would way rather not have combs fall off, but I can't do anything really to prevent it. I tried everything last year, and there was nothing really I could do. And I really don't think that it's healthy for my birds to have that heat and to have that huge adjustment to temperature if they need the fresh air. So for our birds, unfortunately, frostbite happens over the winter. It takes a while for the whole process, but then once it is done, it's done, and they are very less likely to ever have it happen again. So it's usually just a first winter thing for a lot of our birds. A lot of our birds learn to sleep with their head underneath of their wing, which helps, which is why a lot of them don't. I had roosters last year that barely had a touch of frostbite, and some that lost their whole comb because they didn't. I have one opal rooster that has frostbite really bad because he liked to stay outside when it was really cold, and I'd have to chase him in. So there was only so much I could do to try and prevent it for him. At the end of the day, he's still an animal and makes his own choices regardless of how I feel about it. And so we do try our best to keep them warm and comfortable and cozy in their coop as much as possible, but also allowing them that time to be outside and have that freedom to still be animals and birds outside. For keeping your chickens warm and cozy in the winter is food. So our girls have that big feeder in the coop that is full of grower, lots of grower in the winter, and layer pellet. They don't lay a lot, so mostly grower. Now, they also are getting these grains. So there's grain all over because they scratch in it and fluff it all over. So right now, those girls are picking through. They're eating all the corn. They eat all the corn first. So they've got corn, oats, barley, black oil sunflower seeds, and a little bit of rabbit pellets. Pellets are actually good for chickens. There's no reason why they can't eat rabbit pellets, because rabbit pellets are mostly grasses and hay, just put in pellet form as a diet for rabbits. So I mix in every once in a while a little bit of rabbit pellet in my chickens' scratch feeds, because it does have all of those grains, or all of the grasses and things that they would normally be getting when they free range in the summertime. So they have lots to eat. So my biggest tip for wintertime that helps keep your birds winterized, like warm overnight on the roost, is to come out and feed them before they roost. Now, right now we are getting really short days. So we are sitting right now at around 11 hours of daylight. So the chickens aren't coming out till about 8:30 in the morning. And then they are going to roost around 3:30, between 3:30 and 4 o'clock. Some of them are in bed already by 3. Some of them like to stay out a little late. So with these birds, I got turkeys eating at my feet. With these birds, I like to come out before they go to bed on the roost and give them the oats and barley and corn and black oil sunflower seeds again before they go to bed. This makes sure that their crops are nice and full, and it gives their bodies something to digest while they're on the roost. If their bodies are digesting and working inside, it will produce lots of heat. So I always make sure I come out and feed them that snack again before bed, before they go on the roost, to keep their bodies nice and warm during the night. And that really makes a big difference on our birds and produces more body heat in the coop. So as I had mentioned before with the eggs, they really don't lay a lot of eggs in the winter unless you supplement light. You saw how dark it was in there when I was standing there, so they need a supplemental light. I have decided this year to hold off on that until December, so I will not be adding supplemental light for a little while for these girls. So they will have a little bit of a break for a little bit here, and then we will start adding the light to get a few more eggs in before the breeding season. A couple things to add on about the chickens. So I will make them a layer mash. The mash is basically just their layer and grower pellet that I feed them normally in a bucket, and I'll soak it overnight with either like, you can just do water if that's all you have. I'll do like chicken broth or like a chicken stock. I'll do like my leftover whey for making cheese, and I'll use that to feed them when it's soaked and they think it's delicious. They just cleaned up the last batch and it's not very cold. It's a treat I kind of save for when it's really cold, when they have to be more cooped up, locked in their coop. So that's something that I normally would do as well for them when it gets really, really cold, and it doesn't really cost you anything because it's just their normal layer feed in a bucket, soaked, and they think it's delicious. So I had mentioned a few things with breeds, and that some breeds are tougher, but we have lost two hens so far this winter, which is by absolutely no fault of our own. They get out and they go off and forage in the barnyard and then don't make it back in time for dark. And even though I do a head count on the roost at night, if they are too out and about and I can't find them, a lot of times they'll roost underneath bush or underneath logs or underneath the sheds, and then I can't see them and they freeze, which is really devastating, and I always try to prevent it. But the two hens we have lost were actually marins. All of the lag bars seem very diligent about making it back. They love to forage, but they seem to be a little bit smarter in that aspect. So even though they are our less hardy breeds, they seem to actually fare pretty well. And we never lost any leg bars last year, and we haven't lost any this year so far. And we lost a couple marins last year in the cold, and we've lost 2 this year because they get out and they get lost. So we do our best to try and prevent that, but unfortunately winter loss is a cruel reality. Thought of one more thing when I came into the house. This is all the eggs we've gotten in the last 3-4 days. Broken frozen eggs are very common. So yeah, you can see. So this is a broken egg that cracked from the frost. So with these ones, there's 2 different types of frozen eggs. This one, you can see it's split, but it didn't break the membrane. It's just the shell. So this one we can thaw out and eat it. But if it breaks and splits the membrane and you can see it's kind of oozy, anything like that, those ones we feed to the animals because the membrane is broken and you get bacteria and other yuckiness inside. So frozen eggs are pretty common in the winter months. All right, now I think that kind of has everything covered. Breeds makes a difference too. We have black copper marins, we have cuckoo marins, we have golden craylet, and we have opal lagbars. Lagbars are not as winter hardy, so I tend to lose combs in my lagbars faster than I do on the marins, which I'm especially noticing right now. But that doesn't mean that they do terrible. Especially my opal lagbars. Opal lagbars actually are a little bit floofier, and so they seem to actually be doing a little bit better. But I mean, I still have all of the birds that I got from Saskatchewan, the golden craylets I got from Saskatchewan. I actually have a couple of them right there, getting a drink. So they still did just fine last winter, and so it really, like, because they're in a big flock and there's a lot of them in the coop, they're fine. And they have all of the marins in there too to cozy up to. So the breed does matter if you are really concerned. Orpingtons are really popular in the north because Orpingtons stay really warm. Our black copper marins are fully feathered. They stay warm, but we do lose combs to the roosters on the black copper marins because marins are typically get nice, big, huge, rich red combs, and so we do lose those, unfortunately. So yeah, that's kind of the only other thing. If you're looking, there are some breeds of chickens that just tend to do a little bit better in the winter than others, but that's kind of the only thing we've noticed, is that some are just more susceptible to the frostbite than others. So that is all for today. I hope you guys learned something new today, and make sure you guys subscribe to our channel. We will be continuing this winter series, going through all of the animals here on our farm. We'll see you guys next time.